What happens when two brilliant minds from completely different worlds step into the same space? What happens when we let go of debate and choose convergence instead? This is the Synergy Sessions, where ideas converge and new worlds emerge. Hosted by veteran broadcaster Sandie Sedgbeer, these conversations explore the fertile edge where science meets soul, mystery meets method, and truth gets redefined. Paradigm shifting, thought expanding, unexpected. This is not a debate, it's a convergence. The Synergy Sessions, where ideas converge, new worlds emerge.
Hello. We've all had them, those strange coincidences that seem too perfect, too personal, too timely to ignore. Are they just flukes, or is something more going on? In today's Synergy Sessions, we're looking at synchronicity through two very different but surprisingly aligned lenses of meaningful coincidences. Bernard Beitman is the author of Life-Changing Synchronicities and Meaningful Coincidences and founder of the Coincidence Project, a global initiative dedicated to exploring how synchronicity and serendipity shape our lives. Dr. Anona Blackwell is a medical doctor and former academic physician who was published 3 times in The Lancet. Her life and career took a radical turn after a series of powerful synchronicities disrupted everything she thought she knew. Her book, From Medic to Mystic, traces that journey with honesty and insight. In this episode, we explore how synchronicity shows up, why it tends to strike in moments of crisis or transformation, and what happens when we stop dismissing these experiences and start paying attention to what they might mean. Dr. Bernard Beitman, Dr. Anona Blackwell, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Sandie.
Thank you for inviting us.
I'm going to ask this question of both of you, and Dr. Blackwell can answer first. What is one moment of synchronicity that changed the course of your life?
It's very difficult because I tend to link synchronicity with prayer and to a degree with sort of telepathy. And I suppose I can't think of a particular synchronicity that changed the course of my life because I was already on a spiritual path. But one particular incident occurred many years ago when I was hoping to do some research looking to look at brain function of a medium while they were doing their mediumship. And I was sitting on a train travelling from Swansea to London, and I thought what I need is a documentary filmmaker, because I thought one way of paying for the research would be to have a documentary made of it. And so I just sat quietly on the train, the carriage was about a third full, and I said, if we're meant to do this, please send a documentary filmmaker into my life. And I prayed for about 10 minutes or so. And then the train pulled into Cardiff station, and a lady got on who sat diagonally opposite me. And I felt this rush of energy between us, but I wasn't quite sure what was going on, but I just thought that was weird. And we just discussed, life in general. But as we got off the train in Paddington, I said to her, by the way, could you tell me what your occupation is? And she said, I'm an independent documentary filmmaker who specialises in complementary and alternative medicine. And that struck me as being kind of amazing. And so I think it didn't so much change the course of my life, but it certainly is one incident where I felt very much in touch with what I think Bernard would call the psychosphere, the energetic consciousness that we all share.
Mm. Bernard, tell us an experience in your life, and also what Dr. Blackwell said there raises a question for me, and that is prayer when a prayer is answered, many people would say, you know, the powers that be are answering my prayers, the angels, God, whatever. Or they might say, well, that's a synchronicity. What do you think about that?
Well, synchronicity is a broad term. It's intended to be an umbrella term, as is meaningful coincidence even more. And the reason I use synchronicity more and more is because the term suggests there's a connection between our minds and our environments. Fundamental to synchronicity is a connection between a mental event and an objective event. Something happens in your mind, something happens out there, and there's a parallel between them. There's some similarity between them. And that similarity strikes the person seeing them, the similarity, as meaningful. A coincidence, a synchronicity doesn't become meaningful until somebody sees it. You've got to see it first. And once you see it, and then you notice that there's some kind of correlation that you can't explain, and that's the key part of this. If you can explain it, and many people say, oh, it's God, or it's fate, or it's random. And that's why they say there are no coincidences, because they have an explanation. But I'm into the mystery part of this. I really don't know. And I think there's a lot of parts of reality we don't understand that synchronicity tends to alert us to. So that the idea here, what Dr. Blackwell was saying, is that she was thinking something. I may as well get a documentary filmmaker. And what she did is the key thing is in synchronicity, in making these coincidences happen, is you got to ask. Yeah. It doesn't happen, well, I'm sitting here and it's going to come because I'm thinking about it. That may happen sometimes. It may happen sometimes.
So tell me one experience in your life that really was a pivotal moment.
Well, this book, Life-Changing Synchronicities, is about my life-changing synchronicities. So I'll throw a couple of dice here and come up with one. There are two that are pretty fundamental to my starting off into this, and the first, and they both involve my father, and they both have to do with love. Parental connections are rich with coincidences, as are any loving relationships. Could be friends, could be siblings. They increase the likelihood, but part of the funny part of that is because you know them, they'll tell you about it. So we may have many coincidences with people that we don't even know about. And that's part of what I'm trying to be able to do, is help people with similar coincidences to meet each other. So when people read my book, like Jeff Mishlove the other day, when I was being interviewed with him, we both described life-changing synchronicities. He had a parallel one with mine, and I was surprised to hear his. And for me, it was getting on a plane from Wilmington, Delaware to San Francisco, and being seated next to someone, assigned seats back then, didn't pick them, and she had a big watch on, and she asked me, what time is it? And so that became the mother of my children, meeting like that. Now, I had just going back from my father's tombstone unveiling. So my father wanted me to marry a nice Jewish woman. So according to our tradition in my family, have a Jewish son, because I was the fifth in a line that I knew of the first son of the first son of the first son of a Jewish mother. So I think my father, I told Jeff this, had something to do with it. And Jeff says, oh, wait a minute. That happened to you? I was in a plane, and my father, who had died, as my father had died, came to me. Jeff said he had been doing a lot of Jewish ritual things, putting on tallis and tefillin. These are things Orthodox people do. And he'd been doing that pretty regularly. And his father came to him and said, well, Jeff was on the plane. If you keep doing that, don't do it for me. That was life-changing for Jeff because he gave up the Jewish faith with that communication from his father.
Dr. Blackwell, you said you were on a spiritual path for a long time, but I think, from your book, it's become clear that you didn't always know you were on a spiritual path. And your life at some point was, completely guided by logic, reason and structure because of your career, what you were trained. What was it like when those things started giving way to something that you couldn't explain?
Well, sorry, is it me?
Sorry, this question's for Dr. Blackwell.
Sorry. Good,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sorry. It was, I think in a way, you're correct in a way, because I think I always was on a spiritual path. I may not have been totally aware of it, because when I was 17, I predicted one of my school teachers would die. And so my family kind of accepted it because my mother was somewhat psychic and my father certainly was telepathic. And I think living in the countryside, having no distractions because all I did was work on the land and go to school, made me much more connected with spirit and with nature. And so when weird stuff started happening in earnest, such as when I was at St. Thomas's Hospital and patients would sometimes come in accompanied by their dead relatives with whom I'd have a telepathic communication. I just looked at it as part of life, and I can't understand why I didn't challenge it, even though I had a degree in biophysics and my tutor was Maurice Wilkins, who shared the Nobel Prize for discovering DNA. So it was a very hardcore left-brained upbringing. And yet I still accepted the softer side of spirituality all my life. And so it became natural when my second Lancet paper, which was a therapeutic study, and it was quite expensive, and I needed all my patients to come back for their follow-ups. And I used to hold their case notes and pray over them, because in those days we didn't have mobile phones. And my follow-up rate was so good, it was almost unbelievable. And I can remember being questioned about it at a conference, and I just said, oh, they were a very compliant group. I didn't actually admit that I'd used the power of prayer. And so I integrated it, and I didn't have a problem. It probably means I am rather weird, I suppose. So,
Dr. Beitman, you have studied thousands of stories of coincidence and synchronicity. What was it that convinced you that this wasn't just chance, but something worth taking seriously?
It didn't take much. It just, because I had many of them, and I'm a scientist and a clinician, and part of what we do in medicine is get new ideas from collections of case reports. So I have a couple of these things, like I get lost and my dog gets lost and we find each other. The most important thing there was when I was 8 or 9, I found him. So that stuck in my head that I got lost and he was lost and we found each other. So that wasn't chance to me. That was love. We needed to find each other, and we did. And after that, it was just part of the way reality worked for me. I didn't grow up like Dr. Blackwell did in a family that was tuned in to telepathy and things related. I grew up in a family that had refugees from Nazi Germany, and glad to be alive. And I had with me a sense of history since I was born during the Holocaust. So there were some things like that. And going to the synagogue, there was something we said one of the services for the boys after their bar mitzvah, age 13, we'd collect on Sunday mornings and do a service. And one of the prayers we did began like this: what are we? What is our life? What is our goodness? What is our helpfulness? What is our strength? What is our might? What can we say in thy presence, Lord our God and God of our fathers? Indeed, all heroes are as nothing before thee, the men of renown as though they never existed, the wise as if they were without knowledge, the intelligent as though they lacked understanding. For most of their doings are worthless, and the days of their life are vain in thy sight. Man is not far above beasts, for all is vanity. Well, that gave me an idea there's more than just me around here.
I could see how it would, yeah.
Yeah. So each of you has defined or described synchronicity as something more than just signs, part of a deeper intelligence, an organizing intelligence. What do you believe it is? So let's start with Dr. Blackwell. What do you believe it is, and why do some people seem more attuned to it than others?
I think we've all been brought up to believe only in Newtonian reality. And I think those of us who have been aware of the spirit world from a young age are probably just literally more tuned into it. I certainly know when I started doing my spiritual healing training over a 2-year period, that weird stuff started to happen at a greater speed than it had previously in my life. And so I think it's mainly being aware of the possibility and having an open mind, because some people just simply don't have an open mind. And so that would be the simple answer.
Yeah. Dr. Beitman, what do you think this organizing intelligence is?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm interested in knowing what people might call the mind of God. I'm curious, and I don't try to have a firm idea about it. So many people do say it's quantum entanglement, or there's a quantum field that we're part of. I'm just a guy standing here on Earth, noticing that humanity is on a suicidal trek right now, and I think I'm pretty sure there are other entities around, not just us here. There are a lot of disembodied ones around, including deceased parents and deceased relatives. I'm pretty sure Jung is hanging around here too, just to see what's happening. Have maybe a little contact with him, maybe, but more contact with other people. It's enough, Sandie, to figure out what's going on around here. And what we can do about this suicidal trajectory. So I come up with ideas about what might be here. So I'm so glad Dr. Blackwell mentioned the psychosphere. The psychosphere is an area of mystery. It's our mind in the atmosphere. It's our atmospheric mind. Our minds and the minds of disembodied creatures. It could be also where the Akashic record might be. I'd rather say there's a lot going on right here. How deep is the ocean? How high is the sky? Well, there's a lot in either direction. And I'm into wondering how our human minds expand and can contact with each other. So right here, a good part of what I think about is our own collective human intelligence, our human mind, nature's intelligence, what nature knows, nature's mind, the Gaia sphere. These are all elements impacting meaningful coincidences. I can't yet go to whatever anybody means by the universe, because people say, oh, the universe did this. It's imagining. Prayer is imagining. You can imagine without prayer, there are various forms of it. So our minds are much more powerful than we allow ourselves to think. So I'm still here trying to understand how our minds and our collective minds and the collective mind of our species and with nature may influence some of what's going on down here.
Well, you mentioned quantum entanglement, and in my book, you know, if we understood more about quantum entanglement, we would understand that we are all connected. And if we understand that we're all connected, then just maybe all of this chaos that is going on down here, you know, would become unnecessary. We wouldn't need it because we would understand that we are designed to be, you know, something else. Do either of you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I didn't know who you were calling on that time.
Okay.
So
Sorry, that's my fault. That's
okay.
my fault.
yeah, we're connected. And just because you say we're connected is not enough. Lots of people are saying we're connected, and that's not enough anymore. Whether you use quantum entanglement to say, okay, that's what it is, or something else, for me right now, it doesn't matter. I'm saying synchronicities illustrate how we're connected with each other. Because my father and I could be choking 3,000 miles away. Telepathy shows how we're connected with each other right here. So we are connected. But Sandie, I'm going to ask you, when you say, once we realize we're all connected, then what? Because that's what I'm trying to answer. It's what? So we're all connected. Then what are you going to do with that?
Well, it's not just going to be, you know, in my mind. Once we accept that, we will start experiencing that more.
How?
And if we experience it in many ways, you know, maybe through quantum entanglement, maybe through many other ways. But the point about it is at some point we've got to have experiences that show us something different than what many people are experiencing now, which is keeping everybody polarized. And
That's why I emphasize synchronicity, Sandie. Those are experiences that show Jeff and me connected. And Anona went through my book, and thank you very much for doing that, Anona, and seeing parallels between some of things in her life and some of mine. That's to show that we have similar experiences, and that's to show that we are connected in ways we don't really know until we tell each other. So when I was asking you, Sandie, is how do we give people who want it, and so a lot of people don't want it, the experience of our interconnectedness? That's the fundamental question, not quantum mechanical entanglement. It gives us a good hint, but we are entangled here. How do we help people have the experience of that entanglement? That's my question.
I think we're both actually talking about very similar things. We're just looking at it from different angles.
As usual.
In my book, you know, I think that a lot of people won't believe something until science says, yes, quantum entanglement does exist.
That's
now,
right.
You already know that because you're experiencing that and you're experiencing it through synchronicities. Other people may not even think about synchronicities or take them seriously until science tells them that we are entangled.
I think that is where Bernard's book, and to a degree my book, is trying to... We got to nibble away at things slowly, because I think people are generally afraid of change. And I find it quite interesting because I've had communications from people who've read my book have said, oh, yes, that happened to me, but I thought I was going mad. And so I think if we can nibble away to get people to understand about the psychosphere, which I think is a brilliant term, and the fact, for me, the communications I've had have been almost always through the vibration of intense love. And I think Bernard mentioned this in his book. Because the best communications I had with the dead relatives was always when there was someone, usually a mother, who wanted to protect or mother or husband, in fact, protect the person I was talking to or to help them. Yeah, but I don't think there's a quick fix, to be honest. At the moment, we're embroiled in so many wars. There's so much negativity in the world and so much fear that I think all we can do as individuals is to try and spread the word, as Bernie's doing very well with his organisation and his books, and in a lesser way myself, so that people will be kinder to each other and realise that in the end, as you're dying, the only thing that really matters is love.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. Yeah. And isn't it a shame that we need to be told to be kinder to one another?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Bernard, you use terms like simulpathity and seriality to describe different types of synchronicity. Can you walk us through how you began categorizing these patterns?
Categories are part of science. So you got to do categories. And I use those categories. I mean, there's a bit of a joke in those categories. They're all meaningful coincidences. And including synchronicity. Synchronicity doesn't cover the other ones, in my way of thinking about it. I like meaningful coincidence. It gives us a little more science to it rather than these terms which have multiple meanings to different people. We know what coincidence means. We don't even know what meaningful means. I mean, we have trouble with what's the meaning of meaning. And one of my favorite things to know is a 1923 book called The Meaning of Meaning is still around, apparently, and it's impossible to read. It's full of axioms, and it's very thick. It's a tough question. What do we mean by meaning? And then you get into these other things, and I'll describe them. But the key part of meaningful coincidences is a mental event and an external event or an objective event. Those are the atoms that make up the molecule of a meaningful coincidence. And I've been trying to get that to be seen, but it's too simple. It's just too easy. People like fancy words. So synchronicity is a beautiful term, invented by Jung, meaning falling together in time is what he meant. Zufallen in German. It was sync, together, chron, in time. Okay, and that was at the same time, and that's not what synchronicities are. A lot of times, there's a space between the first event and the second event, but that's okay. Synchronicity is a great term. Serendipity came out. Horace Walpole came up with that a century before Jung, and Jung knew about it. And he was fortunate to find things, a little bit like what Anona did with I need a documentary filmmaker. So she found one, but he'd look for things and found things regularly. So he had a name for it and called it Serendipity, after the three princes of Serendip, which is a fun story to tell, but I won't do it. That had nothing to do with the real meaning of serendipity now, but it's another good term. And then seriality was invented by the Viennese biologist Paul Kammerer, because he'd sit at a bench in Vienna and watch parallels between people's colors of their umbrellas or the kind of stuff they were wearing or things they would say or tickets and numbers in people's lives. So he was watching things that you could see objectively, not a mental event and an external event. So he did object to object. And then there's simulpathity, which is just a new name for the old definition of telepathy. Telepathy, tele, at a distance, pathy, feeling. Simulpathity is feeling something of someone at a distance. But if you look at those four words, they all begin with an S and end with an ITY. Now, that was kind of me playing with the making up simulpathity, because that's a seriality right there. That's 4 words beginning in S and ending in ITY, and playing around with it. I really want to get to it's a mental event, an objective event, as fundamental to meaningful coincidences, including synchronicity.
Do you think that we are more likely to experience or be aware of synchronicities when we are in a heightened emotional state or a personal crisis? Anona.
I'm just thinking, I think it's about half and half, really. Certainly with my patients, I found that I had, well, more experiences when there was an intense love between the dead person and the individual. But certainly in my own life, I can't really, well, I suppose to a degree. One incident that happened when, oh gosh, when I was looking through the final edit of my book, and I'd been sitting down for about 10 hours, and I was just aching all over, etc. And I was feeling very sorry for my Jack Russell, because I hadn't played with him or taken him out. And so I kind of sat in my chair, and I was talking to him, and I was thinking to myself, should I get another dog or not? And I thought, no, I'm too old, but he needs a friend. And so I kind of thought, oh, I really got to find a friend for my Jack Russell. And then, about an hour or so later, I found him barking or simpering at my back gate. And I saw 2 little brown paws and a brown nose sticking through. And it was a little dog, Jack Russell, called Sam. And that was over a year ago. And Sam and Jasper are now the best of friends. And also I've made friends with the mum. So I think, I was in a heightened state to a degree. I was concerned about my dog, although I was worried about the edit of my book as well, mind you. But not really. When I was thinking about the train experience where I was praying for a documentary filmmaker, I was just in a very calm, peaceful state of mind. Although I think also maybe if you're in dire straits and think you're about to die, then I'm sure there are many experiences then where there's been kind of angelic intervention, which I think Bernie would know much more about than me.
What do you think, Bernard? Do you think that, being in a heightened emotional state would make one more susceptible to seeing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's Jung noticed it. I notice it, and it's just a fact. It's not the only thing that will do it. Remember, the way you asked the question is correct. It's like increase the likelihood is what you implied, and yes, it does. During major transitions in life, they are more likely, but also need. I mean, a felt need, like wanted to get a filmmaker. Look, I'm doing this thing. I should maybe have a film made out of it. That's a need, and there's some emotion in that or feeling in that. You want to be. It's there. So need, feeling, and particularly heightened emotion are, from what I've been able to tell from hundreds of stories, key variables in increasing the likelihood that someone is going to experience a coincidence. But the most important variable is the willingness to look. The willingness to look. If you want to get all crazy about all the different variables, the most important one is curiosity. And as Dr. Blackwell said, open-mindedness, but it's open mind to look at something. I mean, you have your open mind, but then you got to pay attention to it. And paying attention to something that's weird, our brains are made to do that. But if it doesn't fit with some category you already have, then you're going to ignore it, even if it is weird. And what I've tried to do with my 3 books, and especially this last one, is to just say these things happen a lot. And here's mine, and some of them happen to you. And it was kind of a surprise to see that, but that is all part of what I'm doing, is to help people have a place in their minds to put a weird event in and say, Beitman experienced that, so maybe other people are.
Yeah. Anona, you saw emotional and spiritual themes in Bernard's stories that weren't always acknowledged. Can you share one or two that stood out
That
to you?
weren't acknowledged in what way?
I don't think that Bernard perhaps, acknowledged them. Maybe you were seeing something that he hadn't seen in the story.
I've mainly commented on incidences where I also had similar experiences. I was particularly interested of when he was a young boy that he'd lost his dog Snapper, I think it was called, and he was kind of almost had sat nav honing in on where the dog was, and I was interested then in telepathy between animals and people, and similar thing happened to me several times with my dogs. I think on one occasion I'd had very bad something called plantar fasciitis and couldn't walk properly, and I was in my garden feeling quite low because for about 18 months I'd been in severe pain, and I was trying to let my dog run around the garden, and I couldn't play with him. And so I actually said out loud, please God, either take this pain away or let me die, because it was that bad. And then almost within seconds, my little dog ran to the gate, and fair enough, he met another dog, because it was my house adjoined the village green. And he ran to the village green gate, and there was another dog on the other side, owned by a lovely lady called Bev. And as I kind of hobbled over, I said, I'm sorry I'm so slow. I've got plantar fasciitis. And she said, I can help you. I specialised in that. She was a state-registered medical massage therapist, had been in California for a long time. And she specialised in plantar fasciitis. And that afternoon, she spent 3 hours massaging me absolutely all over. I felt sore everywhere. But the next day, I walked, and it's never come back. So, yeah, I can't remember what the question was now. I'm afraid I'm having a moment.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that your dog is a third party here in several of your stories. That the dog is the one that somehow seems to be involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly another friend was in a part of Swansea, about 11 miles from where I lived, and she felt there was something a matter with my dog, and because she was very close to Towser, and so she thought, I better go and see. And then she didn't want to come. But she said, as she was driving, it's almost as though the car was forcing her to come to me, because she stopped her shopping, got in the car. And she said every time a left brain would say, don't be silly, go to her home where she wanted to go, the car would kind of take her towards my home. And when she arrived, my dog had escaped onto the village green, and my mother's carer had let him out. And so I think, I think we get telepathy between people, telepathy between dogs. And I think in times of emergency in particular. And when I read Bernard's book, I thought that Snapper story I could really relate to, because, I'm asleep with the dog, but don't tell anyone.
We don't want to know about your love life.
Only snuggles, it's platonic.
That's good to know. Bernard, do you have a story of being in need, like Anona was when she felt that her dog needed a companion? Do you have a similar kind of story where you wanted something, you needed something, and it appeared?
Sometimes that happens, and I didn't know I needed it. I mean, that's been some of the fun part of all of this. Is sometimes you can have some idea, like probably my favorite ones are wanting to hit the opening pitch of a baseball game for a home run. I batted first. I didn't hit home runs, and I imagined doing that, so I did that. In a playoff game, or running the opening kickoff back for a touchdown, and that in a football game. Those are things Anona doesn't know very much about, but these are like athletic things that I like to imagine. But one of my favorite ones was like not knowing that I needed something, but not knowing what I needed. When I was saying goodbye to the University of Washington, who had politely asked me not to come back. They denied me tenure. And being denied tenure is just a horrible thing. They don't want me there. Well, it's important, and I've learned this all along, is to like try to take things like that, which you could be devastated by. But I was like, okay, well, okay, I'm going. So what am I going to do? So I got a job at the University of Missouri. And before I left, I said goodbye to a guy that I worked with who I liked, but was a little nervous about saying goodbye to him. And he did some of the same kind of psychiatric consultation to medicine people that I was doing around that time. In fact, he's made a huge career out of what he's done. And he's a grandfather of a movement that's all over the world now. But he was just another guy doing some research back then. And I said, hey, I knocked on the door. He was there, which is also a big deal. He happened to be there when I was ready to say goodbye. My last day on the 17th floor at the University of Washington Medical Center. And I walk in and there's, hey, Wayne, how you doing? And then I see a paper, and this is part of the scanning thing that I recommend people do, is like when you're in transition, I was in transition, I was scanning, and I saw a paper on his desk by Bass and Wade about looking for psychiatric diagnoses in patients with unexplained chest pain, cardiology patients who just didn't have heart disease. And Bass and Wade found that a lot of them had psychiatric problems, and most prominently, they had anxiety. So Wayne had developed a one-page protocol to use in primary care. And I said, hey, Wayne, can I have that one-page protocol? So I ended up going to the University of Missouri with this thing, this one page about looking for panic disorder in patients with unexplained chest pain, atypical and non-anginal chest pain for Dr. Blackwell, or angiographically normal coronary arteries. So I got about 200 people, 100 in about each one. And that got me 40 papers, and that got me to be chairman of psychiatry at the University of Missouri.
Bernard, you talked about being willing to notice, and that's a key factor. How do we know when a synchronicity is something to act on or just something to notice?
That's two different questions there, I thought. Versus, how do you know even to pay attention to it? That was, I thought, the first question. And you got to develop a synchronicity.
Well, I guess it is actually the same question. Because,
well, there's two parts to it, actually. First, you got to notice it. And so if all the stuff that's going on around you, how do you decide, no, this one I'm going to pay attention to? So I've got this button in my head that's a synchronicity activation button. When things happen, it goes like that. And you can develop it. It's easy because if you like patterns, and us doctors like Dr. Blackwell and I like patterns, we diagnosis is repetition of patterns. Treatment response is repetition of patterns or variations from them. You got to like patterns. I love patterns. So if you see two patterns that somehow match in some way or other, that triggers the synchronicity button, and then you ask your two questions. How do you know what to do with them? How do you know if it's just to notice them or to act on them? Again, we live in a world, this earth place is a place of polarities, and not just politically, it's everything. It's like yin and yang covers a lot of the territory of our reality. We, male and females, dark and light, sun, day and night. There's hundreds and hundreds of polarities that we deal with, and we tend to put them in one place or another. So it's not a question of what do you do with. It's not a question of seeing it and then how do you know what to do with it. It's a question of what do you need to do with it at that moment? What's the meaningfulness of it? But sometimes it's not doing anything. As you implied, your question was kind of either or. Sometimes it's like, wow, man, look at that. That's amazing. And so there's an aesthetic quality to some coincidence. It's just a beautiful thing to see. So I'm singing along the river, and I hit a couple of tenor notes as I'm singing, and then I feel a sound that is vibrating with my tenor note, my sound. And so while I'm singing, the same thing's going on. I go, wow, that's great. It was a truck going across a bridge near where I was singing. So that was just something to enjoy, not act on. Just an appreciation of how things are connected.
Anona, you went through a period in your life when all of the psychic phenomena, synchronicities, everything seemed to go very quiet, and you feared that you'd lost the thread. What did you learn from that period? What did it teach you?
That if you're in a crowded room where there's a lot of noise, you can't hear a still small voice whispering in your ear. And what happened to me is that I seemed to lose my abilities as soon as my mother, who had dementia, moved in with me, in as much as I was grounded in an existential existence rather than living on my own and being able to meditate with my friends. And what did I learn from it? Yeah, I think that in order to have a deeply spiritual life, a degree of isolation for me is important, and I suspect that's why God never sent me a bloke that I could settle down with. There is a comment that I think is quite important, if I may, which is slightly off-piste. I was fascinated by Professor Beitman's work on the association between unexplained chest pain and anxiety. And I think it's quite common for people to somaticize mental disorders into a physical pain. And I saw this quite often in my clinic. And it's kind of where science and spirituality bridged, and that happened quite a lot. And it was in a clinic where we had a new registrar who'd seen a young man, and it was at the time of the big financial crisis a good many years ago now. And there's this young man who actually was a banker, and he'd come in with unexplained testicular pain. He'd already seen the urologist, and they couldn't find anything. And I examined him, and I don't know if Dr. Beitman used to do this, but certainly when I examine a patient, you kind of in your brain go through all the similar times you've seen patients with a similar problem. And so there was me, I was examining his testicles, and in all honesty, I was still holding them as I was thinking, what's going on? And suddenly I felt extremely sad. I wanted to cry. I wanted to burst into tears. And I said to him, this pain isn't in your testicles, it's in your heart. And I said, there's a hole in your heart. I said, not a physical hole, but a spiritual hole. And and I said, I think what's happened is that you've taken the pain from your heart and put it in your testicles. And he burst into tears and hugged me and said the pain had come on the moment the love of his life walked out the door and left him. Well, there are very few testicular pain problems, except possibly torsion or a hemorrhage, perhaps, that can do that. And he certainly didn't have that. And so I kind of was able to explain to him how his emotional state, as I said, he just couldn't take it. And so he transferred his pain to another part of his body. With Professor Beitman's patients, it was to their heart. But I've had patients, especially the gut is a common place for people to store their grief and their anxiety. And to me, that's quite important. I think doctors need to know about that, really. So...
Well, isn't there something, where people can literally die of a broken heart, and there was nothing physically wrong with the heart. but their anguish
yeah,
and their
yeah.
pain or their depression
Yeah,
is so great.
Yeah, I had it, so
that
I
it
got
can.
personal experience. After my mother died and my uncle died and a few other personal problems, I was in a state of, I was broken-hearted. And I was actually admitted to hospital, and my cardiac enzymes were in the range of a heart attack. And they diagnosed broken heart syndrome, and you do get over it, but it can be life-threatening. And so I think what I learned from that is, what can you do to get out of it? With me, I turned to complementary medicine because there wasn't a medical therapy. And so I had Indian head massages, reflexology, meditated. And I think, said doctors need to be aware of how strongly the emotions can affect your general health,
Yeah. Bernard, you talked earlier about having this button in your brain, and clearly you are very well versed in noticing synchronicities. And how can we learn to do that? How can I create a button like that? Perhaps you'd call it a coincidence sensitivity button.
Yeah, that's a better name for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
A coincidence sensitivity button. Only way you can do it is by wanting to do it. I mean, these are things you decide yourself. Partly it's a lot of experiences, but also it's like, okay, I'll let myself become more attuned to the possible coincidences happening around me. And it's an opening up to possibilities that you have, like telepathy. This is a simpler version of it. This is just like alerting. What if you see a red light, you're going to stop your car. If you see some kid run across in front of you, or squirrels like to run in front of my cars. And I'm pretty sure they do that to get their adrenaline going. I'm pretty sure that's why they do it. Hey guys, look at this! Oh, it's so much fun! It's like it's going to like sliding down the hill. You find the things that push your buttons, and you can create your own button by just observing them a lot and wanting to be observing more. It's so much. What do you want? Is it important to you? And part of my job on this earth is to say synchronicities can be important, not only for you, but for the survival of humanity.
Have you, either of you, and Bernard, you can answer first, ever ignored a synchronicity only to regret it later?
I'm better at the other one, which is like doing it and regretting it, because one of the problems with these meaningful coincidences look like they're telling you something. Hey, the universe is telling me to do this, and no, it's not. It's causing you trouble. But the funny thing about that one is that I've done some bad decision making with synchronicities, but quite often they turn out to be, over time, a really good one. It really turns out to be a good thing to have happened. So you can't tell whether it's good or bad right then. Some are good and then turn out to be bad. Some are good for one person and bad for the other person. It's all kinds of ways. But the trouble with your question for me is, if I ignored one, I got to remember that I ignored it. And I'm not. So I can give you another example that's not for me. The guy who helped edit all three of my coincidence books was a magazine writer in New York City, and he wanted to get a job from some guy who owned a good magazine company. And he went to his office, pushed the button, went up in the elevator. It wasn't his office. It was his big apartment in New York City. And the door opened to the apartment, and he saw this guy's name on it. And so he had a synchronicity right there, a serendipity right in front of him. And he didn't do it. He didn't walk in. He didn't knock on the door. He just ran away because he was too surprised. And that's an example of what a guy who owns a record company in New York calls a non-moving violation, where you don't move when you should. And there are lots of those out there. I tend to overdo it and go for them, see what happens.
Yeah,
Anona, what about you? Have you ignored
Yes.
a synchronicity?
Once only. It was at the very beginning of my re-emergence of my spiritual life, and I was training as a spiritual healer, but also doing my regular clinics. And one day, a lady came to see me who was probably in her early 40s, and she had no risk factors for venereal disease at all because she'd been abstinent for a number of years. And as she walked in, a little boy followed her, and he scampered past her and disappeared into the wall. I can still remember his angelic face. He was pre-pubertal, a bit gangly, and I can remember he had I think it was dark navy trousers and a white T-shirt, and I ignored it. I just thought, oh, I'm having a bad day. And anyway, as I was taking the history from her, she said that she had lost a child at that age in a very sad drowning accident. And she said, funnily enough, Doctor, I've just been to see a medium and she tells me he follows me everywhere. And I regret to this day I never told her I'd seen him as well. And I was upset. The next day I thought, oh gosh, I should have told this lady, because I think spirit had brought her to me, because she probably half believed the medium, but if a doctor said there is this child with you, it would have given her a great deal of solace. And I still to this day feel intense guilt about it. But after that, I actually prayed, and it sounds stupid, actually. You think I'm crazy, but I made a pact with spirit, and I was just saying, please, in future, I will always follow these synchronicities, coincidences, messages I get, provided you make sure I don't end up in fecal matter because of it, if you get my drift. And after that, I always followed it. Mainly because of the time I didn't, I think it's negative karma and it'll come back to haunt me. And it was, I wouldn't say the reason I wrote my book, but part of the reason that I hoped I may one day reach out to her and apologize, So no, I always follow it. Having had one bad time, I didn't.
Have either of you ever asked for a synchronicity as confirmation of something?
Yes. But, yeah. But does Bernard want to go first, is sir? Okay.
Go ahead.
Bit of a long story. I had years and years ago, probably about 25 years ago, I had a medium called Angie Kruger, internationally recognized, and she was staying with me one particular weekend. And she has a spirit guide called Richie, who has a totem animal, which is a magpie. Okay. Anyway, she was sleeping in the bedroom upstairs. I was downstairs. It was a June day, so it was bright at about 6:15 in the morning. And I woke up because I could feel something scratching on my pillow. And I said out loud, Richie, is that you? Because that's the name of her spirit guide, thinking he was messing around. And I said, if it is you, give me a sign. And so what then happened is that literally within a minute or so, I could hear in the kitchen that was adjacent to my bedroom, it sounded as though someone was throwing keys at the window. So I got up and had a look, and there was a jackdaw aiming at the window, backwards and forwards. There was nothing to attract the jackdaw, but he just kept going onto the fence, bashing against my window frame. And then I went out and shooed him away. And I thought, well, that was interesting. I wonder if it was Richie, you see. So that evening, my friend Angie went into a trance state, and we were talking to Richie, her guide. And I said to him, Richie, was that you in my bed scratching on the pillow? And he said, no, it was your late Jack Russell. And I thought, oh, gosh, Towsy used to do that, scratch on my pillow. And I said, well, I did ask you for a sign. He said, yes, he said, it was me in the bird bashing. It was COVID, and COVIDs are usually associated with spirituality. He said it was me. He was bashing against the window to give me a sign. And I said, but it was a jackdaw. I said, and your power animal is a magpie. And then he said, excuse my French, where do you expect me to get something magpie at 6:00 in the morning? And so yes, I have asked for confirmation, and that was weird, but it did actually happen, yeah.
Bernard?
It's a great question, but I haven't done it that I can remember. I just like cruise along and see what happens. It's I can't say that I ask for confirmation for a decision I've made. The confirmation I look for is to see if it worked out. That it's a practical thing. It's not trying to have a, a bird show up at a right time to say that's something that's communicating with me. I'm fairly practical about all these things and like to see how it works because I just want to mention that there's so much we don't know, and the idea of saying that I understand what causes meaningful coincidence is beyond arrogance for me right now. Humanity just doesn't know a lot of what's going on in the universe, and I just stay with that. And if something's going to happen that's going to say keep doing it, I'll take it that way. But I don't ask for that. I ask for enough things of trying to like make stuff happen. Like I'm ready to write another book, so I like to get I like to get the help for writing that book that comes from all kinds of different coincidences. The book is written partly by inputs that happen to run across my mind that I happen to look for and happen to find in something because I'm drawn to it. So those are the only confirmations I go for, is something that's practically useful to what I'm trying to do.
Well, let me ask this question of you, Bernard. What are you hoping to achieve with all the research you've done, with the books? You have this great podcast, Coincider,
Thank you.
the website. What is your ultimate goal?
My ultimate goal is psychotherapy for the collective human organism. I want to be able to help contribute to deviating humanity from the direction that we are going. And my ultimate, I'm partly through this book with that name. I want to change the way the narratives people are telling themselves about the future and about themselves. I want to help people do that. It's just because I came across this today. A lot of people say, I change myself, I become more expanded and more conscious, and that helps everybody around me. I think there's some truth to that. But what I am more clearly discovering from the research I've been able to do using artificial intelligence is that we are, as humanity, the whole bunch of us, have a strong strain of narcissistic traits. Not narcissism in the diagnosis, but traits of arrogance and lack of empathy. And we're all, as a globe, responding to lots of traumas that put us in a grandiose, where I'm so wonderful or I'm so terrible sense, and trying to extract things from other people. And I'm going to be encouraging people to look at their own narcissism, to understand how each of us has been infected with narcissism. And with that as part of developing a new movie of humanity. And it has to do with what you're talking about, Sandie, of connectedness. But you can't connect without empathy and without the desire. If you go really spiritual and connect up with the cosmos, you're not here. You are not here. And the spiritual connections that can come from compassion and empathy, from the various forms of love that each of us can experience, are what I'm looking to help humanity do, so that we all know we want to be cooperative. We want justice. We want people to be able to eat. We want some freedom. We want to be able to live and expand. And we're preventing ourselves from doing that. But one of the fundamental problems is we don't get along with each other. And there's one more thing to add to this, which would be another time for us to talk about, is we need to activate more clearly our ability to observe our own minds. Observe our own minds. And I'm looking at developing, if possible, a collective self-observer, an observer of the mind of humanity. And with all that, synchronicity becomes a global way of understanding how we're interconnected, not just with each other, but with Gaia, with our nature. So that we experience, as you said, Sandie, we have to have the experience. And synchronicities provide experiences of connection. In order to see that connection, you've got to observe your experience of that connection. So for me, this self-observer each one of us has is our little bit of what we mean by consciousness. That's our consciousness. Can we put those consciousnesses together in a collective consciousness with the intent of trying to be able to love and have a good time? And by having a good time, I mean love is in many splendid things, all kinds of ways you can talk about it. But mostly, I like to play. And a lot of people like to play. Yes, I'm on the old side of this of living thing, but I still love to play. And play, as I love to say Einstein said, is the best form of research, because in play you're having fun and you're learning and having fun learning. Those go together, and you do that with other kids, otherwise known as adults these days, and you kind of like get into this thing, and everybody's smiling and uncovering realities, which include synchronicities that we not have seen before.
So, Anona, do you believe that synchronicity has a role to play in collective healing, or even in guiding human evolution?
It depends how you define it, really. So I think an awareness of synchronicity makes one aware of the connectedness of every living thing, and I would include animals. And in my case, I even talk to plants as something I got in common with the king, I think. And so, I think if you just open your mind to the possibility that we're all connected, it hopefully will make us kinder. But as Prof. Beitman was talking, I was thinking it's so hard for people because we're lucky. We're living in an area where we're not being bombed. We're not losing family members. But you can imagine if you just had your whole family blown up, then how can you even contemplate? Oh, yes, that was synchronous. If my family hadn't hung around that cafe a bit longer, they wouldn't be dead, putting it in a practical way. So at the moment, I think we're going through a very dark period of humanity. And that when we eventually come out of this, maybe the awareness of synchronicity will help us. But at the moment, I'm rather sad about what's going on, as I know Bernard is too.
Bernard, any last remarks you might want to make in response to that question?
With Dr. Blackwell's sadness, otherwise known as despair for a lot of people, is not an answer. It can't be, in my view. I mean, a lot of people are feeling it, and for good reason. And I'm trying to come up with something that's a little more fun than the catastrophe that we are facing. And we are creating. It's not just facing, that we are creating. So we got to do something, is what I'm saying. You can't just be unhappy and despair or whatever, and you gotta like be a wonderful clinician the way Dr. Blackwell is, a loving clinician, a woman who prays for her patients and helps them, a woman who can pick up diagnoses through her energetic capacities, and being able to have that kind of ability that you have, Anona, spread to other people as possibilities of what we can do with each other. That's what you are doing anyway. I know you're trying to do that, and I just give you more impetus and hope and push that I'm trying to create a new vision for humanity. And this, so it fits with what you know so well, Anona, and better than I do. The new communication forms of humanity will not be these grunts that we call words. They're too cumbersome. Every once in a while, even on these podcasts, I can pick up movies in the person's mind who's talking with me. And so it's a telepathic communication of their movie, of what they're trying to say. And I can pick up what they're feeling as part of that movie. And I can sometimes pick up information from their heart as they're talking, because our bioenergetic fields have information in them. So one of the futures that we are looking for is to be able to help people communicate more efficiently with telepathy and energy between and among us, so that we don't have to go blah, blah, blah all the time. We can oh, yeah, I got it. Oh, yeah, okay, see it, okay. And so you end up being able to use fewer words, the way some twins are able to do it with each other. It's more than finishing sentences. It's really knowing what's going on in the other person's mind.
Yeah. Well, one thing I've noticed, and both of you are authors, and books have been my life, and I am told again and again and again by readers that the book fell off the bookshelf right in front of me, that someone gave me the book that I needed just at the right moment. And I want to say thank you for keeping on writing your books and sharing them with the world, because I know that there are people who are waiting to read them. So thank you very much from everybody for that. And I believe in synchronicity, and I experience it frequently.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Yeah. So that's it for this week, I'm afraid. Dr. Beitman, tell us again the title of your latest book and where people can get more information about it.
It's called Life-Changing Synchronicities. Any place you buy books, I encourage you to buy local bookstores. In Europe, it's a better place to get it now, because the shipping costs are huge from the United States. And just put my name in a search engine and you'll see my books, 3 of them on coincidences. You'll see my podcast, Connecting with Coincidence, and my Psychology Today blog, as well as connect with the Coincidence Project website, Beitman, Beitman. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And Dr. Anona Blackwell, your book, From Medic to Mystic. Tell us where people can learn more
firstly,
about
I think
you and your
my website,
work.
which is all lowercase drblackwell.co.uk. It's got links to both my book and to various podcasts. But also, From Medic to Mystic, you can get it in any bookstore and also available on Amazon. Thank you.
Thank you both. A closing reflection for our viewers at home. What I've taken from this conversation is that synchronicity isn't just about surprise.
Yes.
It's about connection. The universe might not always give you a map, but it does leave markers. And the question to leave you with is, are you willing to follow the ones that don't make sense until they do? That's it for this week. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer. I'll be back with another Synergy session at the same time next month. Till then, goodbye from me. And thank you again to Dr. Bernard Beitman and Dr. Anona Blackwell.
If today's conversation sparked your curiosity, you'll love our other shows. The Synergy Sessions, where leading-edge thinkers collide in bold, unscripted dialogues that ignite new possibilities. Between Realms and Reason, where we journey into the mysterious consciousness, energy, and the hidden layers of reality, where science converges with spirit in ways you've never imagined. And the No BS Spiritual Book Club, where leading-edge new thought speakers, teachers, authors, and luminaries who've walked this path before you share the 10 books that had the biggest impact on their life journey. All 3 shows are available on YouTube, Spotify, Substack, and all major podcast platforms. For more information, visit sedgbeer.com. That's SEDGBEER.com.